Look, they've been inside for 5 years.
Yeah.
I'm not criticizing my court. You can understand my hesitation in criticizing my court because I was part of the institution which I was leading just last year. Each one of these principles which I have mentioned does point to the fact that you can impose conditions to ensure that the conditions for bail are not abused, but you must necessarily take into consideration that they have the right to an expeditious trial, and if an expeditious trial is not possible under present conditions, then bail should be the rule and not the exception.
It sounds a lot to me like you're saying you would have given him bail if the case had come up now.
Well, you know, it's wrong of me to presume what I would have done if I was sitting there.
Yeah. Come on, answer the question.
You know, it's easy to sit outside the court.
Yeah.
Having said this, you know, judges, let me also be fair in the court. Judges have to look at the record of a particular case and then see what kind of evidence there is, what kind of material there is before the court. So therefore, I think I would be, as a judge who has sat in the hot seat for 25 years, be slow to criticize merely because I have a difference of opinion on this one.
Difference of opinion, you don't agree. I think you've just given yourself away with that phrase. Yes?
I just made my point.
All right, okay. I think we've got that. But let's talk generally about bail. Umar Khalid is a celebrated example. But your court has had a mixed record. You've sometimes been very good on bail, haven't you, when you were there?
I think we have. In fact, you know, during my period of 24 months, we disposed of about 21,000 bail applications. And I must tell you that there are cases which people don't think about when they criticize the Supreme Court for not granting bail in a particular case. And I'll give you just two illustrations which come to my mind straight away. There would be probably many more. You've probably heard the name of Pawan Kheda.
Yep. The Congress spokesperson.
Yeah. Pawan Kheda said something which I believe none of us in the audience would say about some other person's parentage, be it a political leader or anybody else. He was about to be arrested. He was boarding a flight, I believe, at Guwahati, and he was about to be arrested. The paramilitary forces had surrounded his aircraft. His lawyer came and mentioned before us, soon after we assembled after lunch, that he's about to be arrested for having said something. The lawyer said that this is unforgivable. It's uncivil. It's not a case for arrest. And we protected him against arrest. That was a leader of the opposition who had said something which was uncivil, but everything uncivil is not something which is an offense under our law. And we protected him against arrest.
And the person he'd been uncivil about was actually a very powerful person. Is it fair to say that?
Absolutely. And you know who the person was.
Yeah.
That
I think many people will, but since he's being discreet, I won't mention the name, but think about it.
Example number two. Teesta Settlewad was denied bail by the Gujarat High Court, but they gave her time until 12 midnight on a particular day to surrender. The two judges who had heard the case differed on whether she should be granted a suspension of her sentence. One judge said she should be granted suspension of her sentence, which meant that she would get bail. The other said no, she has to go in. The matter came up to me as Chief Justice of India when I was attending a music recital of one of my colleagues' daughter in the evening. And I said, this is a case, I was criticized for it, but I said, this is a case where she's entitled to be heard. Whether she gets bail or not is for that court to decide. We constituted a bench at 9 o'clock in the night. That bench decided, a 3-judge bench, a larger bench because 2 judges had deferred, and she was granted bail. If we had not done that, if I had not exercised my administrative powers, she would have had to surrender at 12 midnight, and which meant that she would have gone in for probably several months, or we don't know how long. So, you know, these are the kind of cases which don't necessarily see the light of the day because it's very easy to be critical of those cases where you differ with the Supreme Court. Can I give you one last example?
Yeah, sure.
You know, there was this individual, I'll tell you the name of the individual at the end. This person was charged with having committed electricity theft of electricity cables and equipment. So you can imagine somebody from the margins of our society. Otherwise, who would go on the road and commit a theft of electricity poles and cables? Now, his problem was that he was held guilty in 9 cases on the same day. In each of those cases, he was granted imprisonment of 2 years. His lawyer didn't tell the court that please allow for the sentences to run concurrently, which means that all of the sentences run together. Suddenly he realized that he will be inside for 18 years for electricity theft. He went back to the Allahabad High Court. The Allahabad High Court took a legal view saying that, look, you agreed to this sentence. It was a plea bargain. How can you turn around and come back and challenge that? Came to the Supreme Court and we said, look, personal liberty is a valued fundamental right. And you can't certainly ask an individual who is guilty of this kind of an offense, to go inside for 18 years, more than what ordinarily a person would if he committed murder. Now, I'll tell you what the name of the person was. His name was Ikram. So I just thought I'd mention this because the grant of bail, the grant of relief by the Supreme Court is agnostic to faith, to caste, to gender. Yes, you might have a difference of opinion with the Supreme Court on individual cases. That's bound to happen because you have 34 judges, 17 benches. They called us a polyvocal court. And when there are different people with different backgrounds, different life experiences, different ways of looking at cases, there are bound to be differences of opinion. But that's why, our system is so vibrant, I guess, and does have its imperfections. And we live with imperfections in our institutions in a democracy as well, and try and improve upon them for the future.
You've said, and I think that's probably accurate